Good afternoon. I'm Cadet Spellmeyer, the Arnold Air Society Squadron Commander here at Penn State, and today I would like to welcome you to our first ever virtual Prisoner of War and Missing in Action Vigil. Distinguished visitors, cadre, cadets, midshipmen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Raise.
I would now like to introduce Cadet Noah Schaefer to read the Presidential Proclamation for this year's National POW MIA Recognition Day.
Throughout our nation's history, America's sons and daughters have heroically safeguarded our precious freedoms and defended the cause of liberty both at home and abroad. On National POW MIA Recognition Day, we remember the more than 500,000 prisoners of war who have endured incredible suffering and brutality under conditions of extraordinary privation, and the tens of thousands of our patriots who are still missing in action. Although our nation will never be able to fully repay our debt to those who have given so much on our behalf, we commemorate their bravery and recommit to working for their long-suffering families who deserve answers and solace for their missing loved ones. Today, I join a grateful nation in honoring those POWs who faithfully served through extreme hardship and unimaginable physical and emotional trauma. Their lives and resilience reflect the best of the American spirit, and their immeasurable sacrifices have ensured the blessings of freedom for future generations. On this day, we also reaffirm our unceasing global efforts to obtain the fullest possible accounting of our MIA personnel. The search, recovery, and repatriation of MIA remains help bring closure to families bearing the burden of the unresolved fate of their loved ones. That is why, in 2018, I worked to secure the historic repatriation of remains from North Korea, and why we are continuously working to bring more home from around the world. My administration will never waver in fulfilling our country's obligation to leave no service member behind. This year, as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II and reflect upon both the 70th anniversary of the start of the Korean War and the 45th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, we pause to recognize the men and women who were held as POWs or deemed MIA in these conflicts against repressive ideologies. These service members and civilians, many from the greatest generation, deserve a special place of honor in the hearts of all Americans because of their selfless devotion, unflinching courage, and unsurpassed dedication to our cherished American values. On September 18, 2020, our nation's citizens will look to the iconic black and white flag as a powerful reminder of the service of America's POWs and service members who have gone MIA. This flag, especially when flying high above our military installations abroad, conveys the powerful message of American devotion to the cause of human liberty and our commitment to never forget the brave Americans lost defending that liberty. On this National POW MIA Recognition Day, our nation takes a special moment to pay tribute to those who endured the horrors of enemy captivity and those lost in service to our country. Our nation will continue to be resolute in our relentless pursuit of those remains of service members who have yet to return home from war, and our steadfast promise to their families that their loved ones will never be forgotten. Now, therefore, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim September 18th, 2020, as National POW MIA Recognition Day. Together with the people of the United States, I salute all American POWs who, in the presence of great dangers and uncertainties, valiantly honored their duty to this great country. Let this day also serve as a reminder for our nation to strengthen our resolve to account for those who are still missing and provide their families long-sought answers. I call upon federal, state, and local government officials and private organizations to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies and activities. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 17th day of September in the year of our Lord 2020, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 245th.
I would now like to introduce Midshipman Kyle David Byrne to read the invocation.
Our Father, who by your divine providence this nation has come into being, we gather here in a world where suffering and death may be seen in every corner, where peace is often threatened. A world where pandemics and social injustice threaten the welfare of all mankind. These injustices call out and demand reparation. We look for your guidance. Today, we come together to recognize those who we have loved and lost in honorable service. Those who have sacrificed much for the ideals we hold as a free nation most dear. The very unalienable rights which you so graciously bestowed upon us. Help us to never forget, whether we are on the front lines, in the air, on the sea, or here at Penn State, the weight of this vast sacrifice. For it's so easy in the world today to be self-absorbed in one's personal ambitions and daily endeavors, that one fails to appreciate for all we should be thankful. Therefore, give each of us the opportunity to sit down and reflect each day upon such sacrifices, how they positively shape our society and show us that there is so much more to fight for than just a paycheck or personal advancement. Teach us how to live in a way that honors those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for the benefit of others. These patriots are our examples, as you are the original example, Lord. We remember today with the knowledge that a day when these supreme sacrifices are forgotten is a day misguided. We thank you, Lord, for those who have come before, suffered much, and gave us the example to follow. Amen.
I would now like to introduce Detachment 720's Honor Guard once again to perform the Missing Man Table ceremony.
You may have noticed a small table when you arrived here this afternoon. Please allow me to further explain. The table is set for 5. This table recognizes the fact that members of our profession of arms are missing from our midst. They are commonly called POWs and MIAs, but we call them brothers and sisters. They are unable to be with us this afternoon, and so we remember them for their unselfish service to our nation and for the liberties and freedoms we enjoy as Americans, thanks to them. The table is small, showing the frailty of a single man. Remember. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their motives when answering the call of duty. Remember. The single red rose displayed in a vase reminds us of the life of each of the missing and the loved ones and friends of these Americans who keep the faith awaiting answers. Remember. The vase is tied with a red ribbon, symbol of our continued determination to account for our missing. Remember. A slice of lemon on the bread plate is to remind us of the bitter fate of those captured and missing in a foreign land. Remember. A pinch of salt symbolizes the tears endured by those missing and their families who seek answers. Remember. The glass is inverted to symbolize their inability to toast with us today. Remember. The chairs are empty. They are missing. Remember. Remember all of you who served with them and called them comrades, who depended on their might and aid and relied upon them, for surely they have not forsaken you. Remember.
At this time, students and cadets involved with the Tri-Service RTC branches and Silver Wings will deliver a story about a POW MIA service member of their choosing. I would now like to introduce Cadet Aubrey Amon from Army RTC.
Early in the morning of June 6, 1944, Lieutenant Harry Edward Wagner, a member of the acclaimed 82nd Airborne Division, jumped behind enemy lines, taking part in the decisive Operation Neptune. Alongside his fellow paratroopers, Lieutenant Wagner flew high above the chaos happening on the Normandy coast. To avoid detection by the enemy, the fleet of C-47 aircraft carrying members of the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions approached the mainland from the west via passage over the Cotentin Peninsula. These paratroopers were to land in pre-designated locations, but ultimately most of them became scattered many miles away from their drop zones. Lieutenant Wagner's unit, the 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment, was the last of 6 such regiments to make the jump into the war zone. His experience was especially daunting, having landed with 120 fellow soldiers 18 miles from their target in the marshland of North France. For 6 long days, they held their ground against a battle-ready mechanized infantry unit of the German SS. Then opportunity came to exfiltrate. Paratroopers pushed through bogs and swamps to avoid detection by the enemy. Lieutenant Wagner was later promoted to commander of the 3rd Battalion Headquarters Company. On June 28, 1944, Lieutenant Wagner was killed in action while operating from a command post which came under indirect fire by German artillery. Harry Edward Wagner was a Pennsylvania native born in 1919 and graduated from the Pennsylvania State University in 1941. He was president of the Interfraternity Council, participated in student government, and served as an assistant student manager of the university track and football teams. In 1941, he was drafted into the Army. The news of the attack on Pearl Harbor struck Wagner and was his impetus to volunteer to become a U.S. Army paratrooper. Wagner would go on to serve in the invasion of northern France, which began a grueling campaign that resulted in an Allied victory of World War II. Today, Wagner is memorialized by the Wagner Building located on the east end of Curtin Road. In 1960, the university dedicated this building in his honor. A plaque adorns the side of the building next to the main entrance, reflecting his excellent studentship and outstanding service to country. It was designed to house the Joint Reserve Officer detachments of the Pennsylvania State University, and still, to this day, fulfills that purpose.
I would now like to introduce Midshipman Kyle David Byrne to share the words of Midshipman Zachary McKay from Navy ROTC.
Good afternoon. My name is Kyle David Byrne, and I'm truly honored to speak on the principles of honor, courage, and commitment, which were so actively displayed by Commander Doyle Lynn throughout his experiences as a naval aviator during the conflict in Vietnam, and which are still held so central to the naval service today. Doyle Wimmer Lynn was born on November 3rd, 1926, in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, a mere 3 hours away from this very spot. Following the Second World War, and shortly before the onset of the Korean War, Doyle was commissioned and designated as a naval aviator. He would go on to fly 44 missions with one of the first jet fighter squadrons to enter combat during the Korean War. Following the conflict, Doyle served tours as staff duty in Washington, as a flight instructor, and even attended the U.S. Naval War College before reaching the rank of commander, and being assigned as executive officer to Fighter Squadron 111 in February 1963. Beginning in May of 1964, Commander Lynn participated in many of the Navy's photo reconnaissance missions over Central Laos, flying his F-8 Crusader in and out of Yankee Station, which at this time was positioned just outside the Gulf of Tonkin. Later that same month, Commander Lynn and other pilots began returning evidence of an increased buildup of anti-aircraft guns spread over the Plain of Jars in central Laos, prompting President Lyndon B. Johnson to utilize Joint Air Force-Navy operations in the name of armed reconnaissance. The name of this classified operation would later be revealed as Yankee Team. One of these Yankee Team missions, Commander Lynn and his F-8 provided escort over the Plain of Jars, just as he had done many times before. To his surprise, an unmarked battery of anti-aircraft guns began firing at the squadron. Taking on direct fire, his plane, now billowing smoke, came crashing to the ground. Hope seemed lost. Yet to nearly everyone's surprise, Commander Lynn survived the crash and would be successfully rescued within a mere 24 hours. This rescue operation would ultimately serve as the groundwork for some of the most successful combat rescue missions during this period and throughout our military's history. Upon his safe return home, the pilot offered, "It's wonderful to be back. I have a great faith in prayer. When I was confronted with this situation, my faith became even greater. Anyone who doesn't believe in prayer should come and see me." Even more breathtaking than his courage in the face of peril was his commitment to service, as evidenced by his returning to serve his country within a year of his near-death experience. He continued flying missions over North Vietnam until on May 27, 1965, he was shot down again near the city of Vinh. Heart stopped, hoping to hear the news that a parachute had been located, or that communications had been established, or perhaps that Commander Lynn would give his friends and family just one more miracle. To the pain of a nation, that parachute, that communication, that miracle never came. Commander Lynn's body was never recovered, On May 27, 1965, Commander Doyle Wimmer Lynn was officially listed as missing in action. Between 1964 to 1972, 83 FA Crusaders were either lost or destroyed by enemy fire. Another 109 required major rebuilding. 145 Crusader pilots were recovered, 57 were not. 20 of these pilots were captured and released. The remaining 43, including Commander Lynn, are missing to this very day. It is through stories like that of Commander Doyle Lynn that those of us in uniform, regardless of branch and regardless of designator, are reminded of the honor and bravery of those who have not only gone before us, but who are unable to return home to the country they swore to protect. In their memory, let us do our duty as we see fit to honor them through our daily actions of service and sacrifice. May God bless you.
I would now like to introduce Cadet Luke Jariga from Air Force ROTC.
Good afternoon. I'm Cadet Luke Jariga, a current cadet at Air Force ROTC Detachment 720. I'm also a current member of the Harry R. Armstrong Squadron within Arnold Air Society and have been so for the last 2 years. Today, I have the privilege of sharing the story of Colonel Leon Lee Ellis. Ellis was an Air Force ROTC cadet much like myself and many others here at Penn State. In fact, while attending the University of Georgia, he was also involved in Arnold Air Society. Following graduating and commissioning from Air Force ROTC, Ellis became a pilot and was quickly involved in the Vietnam conflict. By the age of 23, Ellis was already flying combat missions in the hostile skies of Vietnam. On one such mission, on November 7, 1967, Ellis was hit by enemy fire and forced to bail out of his airplane and drift to the ground, occupied by the enemy. While years ago he had learned his military code of conduct, he had never expected to be in need of those articles at the age of 24 when he was taken prisoner. The values of the military code of conduct he had memorized in the very first phases of ROTC would become his guiding compass in the days, months, and years to come. As a prisoner of war being held by the enemy, he recalls feeling obligated to believe in himself and to maintain the values which had been instilled in him years prior. While he knew it would not be easy, Ellis maintained a positive and confident attitude, even when times became tough. While imprisoned in his small cell that was only 6.5 feet across and a mere 7 feet in length, he recalls being fearful in the face of threats that he would never return home. He and his comrades resisted torture and only gave their name, rank, service number, and date of birth as the military code of conduct specifies. Even with the harshest torture, the only information they gave into providing was false information. While in the face of continued torture and having poor food, clothing, and overall living conditions, Ellis and his comrades continued to be hopeful for a return home. As months passed, they learned of the resiliency they were capable of. When describing this resiliency, Ellis said, "We kept bouncing back. We would get sick. We would get cold. We had all sorts of injuries with us. The body and mind and the emotions were so much more resilient. But there were some things that helped us with that. We had the mentality to stay positive, to stay competitive, to want to win. We knew who the enemy was, we knew what our goals were, and we stuck together as a team." The story of Colonel Ellis is one of those in which none of us can imagine living through. However, the values demonstrated by Ellis are those in which we can strive to exemplify when we put this uniform on. We strive to have a love of country, an everlasting commitment to our nation's defense, and a trust in our fellow brothers and sisters in arms, no matter what the situation is. These are the values Colonel Ellis exemplified for 4.5 years as a prisoner of war. On this prisoner of war and missing in action day, we have a duty to be our best today and every day for those who do not return home to us today. Thank you.
I would now like to introduce Miss Julie Highland from Silver Wings.
Good afternoon. I am Julie Highland, the president of the Colonel Gouen S. Bluford Silver Wings chapter at Penn State. Silver Wings is a joint civilian and Air Force ROTC organization partnered with Arnold Air Society. Today, I have the honor to share the story of Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Stonebreaker, an Air Force pilot who has been marked as a POW MIA. Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Stonebreaker served with the 11th Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron, 432nd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing, 7th Air Force. On October 28 in 1968, Lieutenant Colonel Stonebreaker left Udon Airfield in Thailand on a photo reconnaissance mission over North Vietnam. The aircraft departed its base at Udon Airfield for its target, which included an ammunition supply dump near Hanoi. The photo reconnaissance mission was completed successfully. After receiving new flight instructions and weather advisories, the radar lost connection. The last known location was over Quang Binh Province, Vietnam, 200 miles from the intended target and about 15 miles west of the city of Dong Hoi. No trace was ever found of the aircraft and its crew. This October will not only mark 52 years since Lieutenant Colonel Stonebreaker left Udon Airfield in Thailand and never returned, but 52 years of unanswered questions and uncertainty for his friends and family, including his daughter, Cindy Stonebreaker. In December 2012, Cindy Stonebreaker made her first trip to visit the wall, which honors those who were killed in action or declared missing in action during the Vietnam War. In Washington, D.C., on the wall, she found her father's name etched on panel 40 West, line 51. Cindy said, "For the first time, I truly felt that he was being honored, that he was not forgotten. It was very important to me because for 45 years, I thought he had been forgotten and that nobody cared." While this wall serves to honor the unreturned and bring comfort to their families, many families continue to suffer with the loss of a loved one who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country, not ever knowing what happened to them. For the families of service members who are unaccounted for, the wall is one of the few places that can offer some healing. I cannot begin to express what these families go through, but I, like many others, can attest to the moments that I've shared with my own family and friends and how my life might be changed without these people and moments. If I were to try to imagine my life without the memories that I have made with my parents and all my loved ones, I know for certain that I would not be the same person that stands before you today. For a child, spouse, parent, family member, and friend to move forward after such suffering is the continuing sacrifice that we so often overlook in the tragedy of a fallen or lost veteran. Each day, we live with the uncertainty of tomorrow. While we do our best to take advantage of the moments when we can hold our loved ones close, we cannot forget the possibility that it could be the last time. It is with deep appreciation and sincere respect that I stand before you today and thank you for your service.
I would now like to introduce Mr. Tom Inkiltera, the Northeast Regional Coordinator of the National League of POW MIA Families, as our guest speaker today.
Hello, my name is Tom Inkiltera. I'm the Northeast Regional Coordinator for the National League of POW MIA Families. We're the oldest and first of its kind in America's history. Founded in 1970 as a tax-exempt family member organization, nonprofit. I bring greetings from our family member, board of directors, volunteers, and especially for all of our family members who still wait for an answer on what happened to their loved ones from the Vietnam War. There are 1,586 still unaccounted for from Vietnam. Today is National POW MIA Recognition Day. It's a day we set aside to pay tribute, honor, and remember those who did not return from war in Southeast Asia. Be they last known to be prisoners of war, killed in action, bodies not recovered, or just plain missing in action, to which we don't have any idea what happened to them. In normal times, Americans across this nation would gather to hold an observance or a ceremony by veterans organizations or concerned citizens. But COVID-19 has changed all that this year, which is why I'm coming to you from my home. Still, the U.S. military and military ships across the world will have a ceremony today, as they've done for decades. And we all thank you for the ceremony, this one, that you adapted and adjusted in this present environment. I do want to thank First Lieutenant Rawls for inviting me to participate today and for his coordinating with me. Coronavirus has also dampened our efforts to conduct investigations, excavations, and surveys into the possible battle grave sites, crash sites, and to interview Vietnamese citizens in Laos and Cambodia also, as Vietnam is experiencing their second wave of the coronavirus. We only had one identification made since last year at this time. But we all have a sacred trust, a sacred promise made to all of our military service members, past, present, and future, that if something should happen to you, if you are held by the enemy or missing in action, America and its citizens will fight to find out what happened to you, and we will fight to have you accounted for. If your family calls, we haul. But there is something we can all do aside from the COVID-19 and around it. Honoring and remember is great, but we can all help to get answers. I would suggest and urge you to contact your congressional leaders and your senators and tell them you want them to stay focused on the fullest possible accounting of those unaccounted for veterans, especially from Vietnam. Call their local offices, send an email or a letter. They are the ones who fund the Department of Defense accounting operations. But tell them we're running out of time. Vietnam is industrializing, so it's building all kinds of warehouses and factories, and they're literally paving over areas where we might have a body underground. And also, let them know that the soil acidity in Vietnam is so high that any more time goes by, we might not be able to dig and get their identification through DNA because the acidity will degrade the DNA. And one more thing. We always relied on older Vietnamese citizens who work on farms and do planting, farming in the outlying areas. And many of them were alive during the Vietnam War, may have found a body, may have buried it, and only they know who did that and where they're buried. We need that for our excavations. After all, dying for your country isn't the worst thing. Being forgotten is. I'll end now with 3 short lines that I wrote in 1983. I was trying to finish up a number of speeches that all ended the same. And I kept writing things down and then erasing them or crossing them out. But I came up with 3 absolute short lines that explain this whole issue. America raised them, America sent them, and America wants them back. And I want you to know how much all of us in the National League of POW/MIA families thank you for having this ceremony. God bless you and all of the members of Detachment 720, Air Force ROTC, PSU. Thank you.
Now, please join us in watching the 21-gun salute, followed by a performance of taps.
Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, safe. Oh, preset.
I would like to sincerely thank each and every one of you today for watching our video to show your support for POW MIA service members and their families.